What's going on, dads? Your boy Big Dave back with another episode of Culture Dads, Age of Sword Cassette. Mike, how we doing this morning?
I'm doing good, Dave. Yeah, feeling good. This is the first time in like 6 weeks, I think, doing Culture Dads where I'm like in full health. It's winter here, so my kids have been bringing home disease after disease, but I'm on top of it now. I've moving on up. But big releases for Imperium and Bizarre Archives, with Bizarre Archives 5 coming out, and this one that we just dropped, which is it is Shakespeare's major tragedies. It's Hamlet, Macbeth, Othello, and King Lear. The Western canon series is always, it's a bitch to put out. I mean, just to be honest with you, because these classic works, they're usually a lot of verse, a lot of crazy formatting, internal formatting and everything like that. Like, with Poetic Edda, we had to do the Old Norse and we did the Old English with Beowulf. And it's a crazy nightmare to format these things. Mm-hmm. But it's done. It looks amazing. I've got a copy on my desk. I was reading it and prepping for this episode. And, I'm the thing I'm almost like the most proud of about this release is that there are 1,100 words in the glossary of just like words that nobody understands anymore. They're Shakespearean terms that are just completely opaque to us. And doing this and going through that, it just makes it such a useful tool. Like now you can understand every single thing in every line of Shakespeare, which is unbelievable, right? Because reading through this stuff again, it is very... it's tough going, some of it. I mean, it reads well, but it's like, it's just not our language anymore, really. So this makes it accessible. So I'm very, very proud of that. I'm excited to get this out because this is one we needed to do. Obviously, Shakespeare is massive. Harold Bloom says he's the center of the canon, even, above and beyond like the King James Bible or something like that, which is, I guess that's a bit of a... it's a bit of a controversial take, but that's his take. And you can understand what he's talking about. Shakespeare is absolutely uncancelable, unimpeachable, an important a cornerstone of the Western canon. So he is our newest author, which is pretty sweet.
Very cool. Very cool. You know what, with Shakespeare, it's like we all learn about Shakespeare, right? At least a little bit. Growing up, going in school, public school, we learned a little bit about him. I actually had a pretty cool teacher, I guess in 10th grade or whatever, and she was really into Shakespeare. She was a theater person, right? And she was a Shakespeare, traditional Shakespearean, whatever thing. And she would like act out these parts, and she would really get into it. And she actually made it exciting. It was a good thing because she had in my school, we had these classes called applied classes, and you either went into the applied classes when you were a dumb kid or a bad kid, right? If you were too bad, if you had too many detentions, you were on Saturday D Hall too much, you weren't allowed to go into the smart kid classes. They put you in the dumb kid classes. Or if you were just a dumb kid, you got to went to the dumb kid classes. So you got these classes full of kids that just aren't going to pay attention to fucking Shakespeare, right? And she made it exciting for and also these classes were like the only classes, there was like 2 girls in them, maybe. My class had, I think there was 2 girls and like one of them was never there. And so it's like all bros, all bad kids, all like, just the kind of kids that would normally not give a fuck about Shakespeare. And she made it exciting for us. And, I was pretty impressive, right? She would like do her thing. She would do her like little acting and blah, 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 blah. And she got really worked up one time, and which I thought was surprising because she was kind of a hippie, right? She's a hippie lady, definitely a liberal, all this kind of, she's like 60s leftovers. So I was surprised by this. She got mad when one of the kids asked if Shakespeare was gay. Right? he goes, wasn't Shakespeare gay? And she goes, no, he wasn't gay. And just, she like had a big thing about, and then she went through like they made that up and blah 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 blah. He was not gay, and then she made an emphasis on we don't know anything about his life to speculate he was gay. It's just, she goes, that is just bad academics. That's just bad academic work. She's got real mad about it. Yeah. But it was a cool time. We went into, she let us watch the Macbeth movie in like 10th grade. And the Macbeth movie has like naked ladies and murder and stuff in it. It's, you know, most schools around, and she didn't even like, you know, we didn't have to do normally when you watch a movie like that, they send you a slip. You got to take a slip home to get signed by your parents. You know, so she's just like, fuck it. These kids, like, these kids are going to be all right. They probably don't even have parents. You know? So she plays the Macbeth movie for, and let me tell you, that Macbeth movie from this, I guess it was from the 70s. That was lit. That was a cool movie. With had the weird sisters and like all that kind of stuff. That was a cool movie. That was a cool old movie. At least I remember it as such. So I thought Shakespeare was gay, like going into that class. And I was like, boring, gay. So, and then she made it cool for me. Right. So recently, just getting ready for this show, we're going to talk about Hamlet. I tried to watch there's a film, 1996 Hamlet adaptation. I forget who's in it. Kate Winslow. I guess she's the Titanic lady. She was like popping from Titanic back in those days. So she was in it. I can't remember who else. So there's like a lot of big names that were in it. It was like the crown jewel of the Hamlet adaptations. It's supposed to be the most accurate, and it's like 5 fucking hours long. And I'll tell you guys, it is one of the most boring ass movies I've ever put on in my life. And trying to get through it, just the first hour was like excruciating for me. Right? It was like I don't know. It was some of the most painful. It was like getting drugged through an Olympic-sized swimming pool of broken light bulbs. It was so fucking boring. You guys out there that might have better attention spans than me could probably get through it, but I just thought this movie was just, I was like, oh my God, let's fucking go. Somebody die or something. You know, I couldn't do it. I could not do it.
Yeah, I don't like traditional Shakespearean production either. It's just not to my taste, and you know, you can understand. I don't think it's been to very many people's tastes in at least a century or so. I was also introduced to Shakespeare in high school. I don't remember it actually. I didn't really enjoy it. I didn't think it was any good. They didn't even do the cool shit. For some reason they decided that we were going to read Twelfth Night. They introduced us to his comedies or whatever, and I'm like, there's no jokes. It's not funny. Like, like what the fuck? Like it's one of those things where they had to like explain why it's funny, and I'm like, oh yeah, like it's like a fucking it's like dissecting a frog, right? Like, you know, once you open it up, the thing's dead. So anyway, I did not have a really great introduction to Shakespeare. I actually it was lucky enough, you know, because I went to like a relatively preppy high school that they took us to a production of The Tempest. And, you know, I lived in southwestern Ontario where we have a city called Stratford. And there's like it's got like quite a renowned theater production company and everything like that. It's obviously not the one in England, but you know, it's going in that direction. So it was a very quality production. Hated it. Thought it was boring as fuck. Didn't understand what's going on. This is, I think, a fairly typical introduction to Shakespeare. You probably had a better one than most people do, thankfully. But for the most part, it's fairly impenetrable. It's fairly opaque, especially for a high school student anyway, because, you know, these plays were written 450 years ago or so. That's a very, very long time. Language has changed immensely since then. We are only barely into the modern English period with Shakespeare. I mean, like only about a century before that, it was really much closer to Middle English, which is like Chaucer, and that's a whole other level of difficulty to read. You can still kind of fight your way through Chaucer, but any further back, and basically reading another language. But anyway, Shakespeare is still tough going for most people. But I find that he is much, much better to read than to watch, which is obviously difficult if you want to sort of, if you want to just take it in like the way you would take in a movie, because that takes a fair bit longer. And also because of the density of language, and it's quite, alien to us today. It's just difficult to digest, and you miss a lot of stuff. And I'm not going to keep plugging our edition, but this is, I think, one of the things it does really well is that like now you can refer to the glossary and understand everything that's going on. So in preparation for this episode, I actually have been I binged like many of Shakespeare's tragedies, not just the four big ones, but also some of his Roman plays and some of his like the Henriade, which is basically the like Plantagenet. I think it's a trilogy of plays. Anyway, it might be a quadrilogy, but anyway, so they were fairly fresh in my mind. Hamlet was fairly fresh in my mind, and I got about 2 acts into it. It's obviously, busy time these days, so I couldn't get all the way through it, but I it's still fresh in my mind and everything. But the last time I cracked it open, the latest time, like a couple of years ago, where it had been ages since I'd read it, I was absolutely taken aback by this piece of work. It just like there's a joke where someone's like, I don't understand what's the big deal with Hamlet anyway. It's not even a play. It's just one famous saying after another strung together, with like an old plot or something like that. And it's like, it just like, this gives you an idea of like the scope of the influence of Hamlet. You cannot go like more than about one scene without encountering a line that's like a cliche now, and it's not just the like to be or not to be. It's like, the lady doth protest too much kind of thing, like it's like Shakespeare is kind of the closest thing we have now to a debate stopper, right? Like if you are a Muslim, for example, and you're having like a debate with somebody or an argument with somebody, or like not even theology, but just like whatever it is, morality or politics or whatever. The one thing that puts the debate to rest is if you can quote the Quran, right? If you can quote the Quran and have it authoritatively back up your point, the debate is over, right? We could also think in like closer to the Middle Ages, something like the Bible in the West, this kind of thing. We don't really have anything like that today because the Bible is no longer authoritative for us, at least, not generally. But Shakespeare is probably the closest thing we have to that now. He's just looms so large over, especially the Anglosphere, like the English-speaking world, that it's like, if you got like some like trad boy that's like coming out and being like fag this and fag that and gay this and gay and then everything's gay and you're gay and he's gay and it's gay and all this, you're like,
he's gay.
The lady doth protest too much, I think. You know what I mean? And as soon as you say that, it's like, mic drop moment. That's the power of Shakespeare, right? It's like he is such a cultural touchstone for us that he almost like occupies that position of like traditional or epistemic authority, where if you quote him, you win. And Hamlet is the play that I've noticed the most out of any of his plays that has like the densest like batting average of like super famous quotes, per page or whatever it is. So yes, it is an important piece of work. Obviously, everybody knows it by name, even if they don't know necessarily what it's about. to be or not to be is kind of like the touchstone for a elevated speech. You know what I mean? It's important. It's a very important work, obviously. And what we wanted to talk about today was it's funny that this book has just come out for Imperium, that we were working on it, because I have also recently published on the Substack an article about The Northman, this movie that tells the older saga version. It doesn't actually exist in a saga. It exists in Saxo Grammaticus, which is a history. But in this history, this told the story of Amleth, who is the older Danish or Scandinavian version of it's like the story, the original story on which the play Hamlet is based. And this movie came out last year and made a big splash, especially in our scene, because it is so faithful to the original worldview of these pre-Christian Scandinavians. So very important for us. But in the wider world, among normies, and even among people in our sphere, the movie has been seen as kind of amoral. It seems like everybody in the movie is kind of an asshole, and it's very hard to like or sympathize with any of the characters and everything like that, which is, I think, true. It's a fair point, but it's based on interpreting it according to 2023 morality norms. And this is, I think, a mistake, because the beauty of this production, what makes Eggers' movie so important and why it will be remembered for a super, super long time, is because it stays faithful to the original morality of these people. And once you understand what that morality is, it unlocks the characters' motivations. Everything becomes a lot more intelligible. And what's more, and this is the point of the article, the reason why I wrote the article, it's not only is it not amoral, but it's a morality that we have to revive. And anyway, I'll probably unpack that a little bit later. But I thought it was a kind of serendipitous moment for us to talk about both Hamlet and The Northman, and to kind of compare and contrast them. How do they, they obviously tell kind of the same story. The story is very bare bones in its original formulation in Saxo, but it's been taken in two very different directions. How is it the same? How is it different? They're obviously both important pieces of cultural work. I just thought it would be a really good really good thing to talk about, and it's kind of like opportune moment for it. So, yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So The Northman, actually rewatched some of it. I didn't get a chance to rewatch because that's another long movie. But I remember when I was first watching it, there are some discrepancies in it. I have some parts that I disagree with. There's some historical things in there I don't think are as accurate as they should be. There's some stuff, but overall, The Northman does a very, very good job of depicting old Germanic morality, right? Dual morality, the idea of the oath, the idea of vengeance, these ideas of getting revenge for your father, and how that supersedes everything, right? There's been kind of like a little bit of a back and forth between you and our boy old Morgoth about this film, and he wrote some stuff, you wrote some stuff, he wrote some back and forth a little bit, kind of disagreeing on the interpretation of this film. Well, the one thing that stuck out to me is the one thing Morgoth wrote was he said something to the tune of how can I relate with this guy or think that he's a hero when he leaves his pregnant wife to go fulfill his revenge. And I was thinking, it's like, that's another, that to us today, that sounds, that sucks. Have you put
it's a fair question. I mean, it is pretty alien for us.
If you put me today on that boat with my pregnant wife and you said, get revenge for your father or stay with your pregnant wife, I would obviously stay with my pregnant wife. Right. But Actually, I don't know. It depends. It really depends. This guy in this time to not get revenge for your father is like the lowest of the low. You know what I mean? You are to the point that you will go and you will not have a good time in the afterlife if you don't do everything in your power to fulfill this. Right? This is the highest thing that you must do.
It's a religious obligation, basically.
It is a religious obligation, especially after he does all the rituals and he swears an oath and does all of this, right? He offers himself. There's quite a few lines where he's like, I will die before I get revenge for what was the bad guy's name? Einar or something, I think. And he's like, Fjolnir, that was it. Fjolnir. He's like, I'm gonna get fucking revenge, blah blah blah. If it kills me, et cetera, et cetera. And that's like saying I have to fulfill this. By all costs, right? So him jumping off that boat when I thought that was a really great scene. That really drove it home to the audience to these people, this meant more than even your unborn child. You know what I mean? Like fulfilling this was the highest. And he went and, jumped in the water and went and did it. And like typical Norse saga tragedy style, they both die at the end, which I thought was just brilliant. And then the most beautiful scene of the entire movie was like the end scene where it shows the afterlife and there's the Valkyrie and everything. That was a tearjerker right there. That was like, wow. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Movies don't usually kind of like move me these days. This is not just sort of like, oh, whatever, it's all pause. And I'm like, yes, that's so, but it's just that the emotional impact is not quite there for various reasons, but I'm not going to go into all that right now. But this movie absolutely did. There was a couple of moments where there was like a lump in my throat, and I was like able to totally understand where the guy is coming from, especially like, having like lost people and all of that. I get it. I absolutely get it. But there's a line sort of towards the end. It's when he is talking. It's when he's on the boat with his pregnant wife, and he's deciding whether to, like, so there's a point in the movie basically where he wants to, like, he's decided that, okay, so quick summary of the movie. He is the son of a king, and the king is killed. His father gets killed by his father's brother. Flash forward many years, and he's like seeking his revenge. Finally gets, skipping over a bunch of shit here, obviously, but finally gets to Iceland, and he sells himself into slavery, basically to like get close to this guy to exact his revenge. Along the way, he picks up a Russian bride and like a Slavic woman, and it's not really his bride or whatever, but he's like traveling with her. He proves himself as a slave, and then he's allowed to basically take her as his wife. And then he confronts his mother, because like what he wants to do is he wants to save his mother, and like he finds out, spoiler alert, obviously, and he finds out later that his mother actually conspired with his uncle to kill his father. So the mother is also at fault, like she's a villain as well. So he kills her and kills their kid, his, I guess, half brother. And by this time, his like Slavic wife is pregnant, and he's like, fuck this. It's getting too heated. Let's just go. We can go to like the Orkney Islands. I know I have some kin there. They'll hide us or whatever. But he sort of talks himself into, actually, no, I need to stay and exact my revenge. And there's a line that comes out during that scene where he talks himself out of going with her to the Orkney Islands. He says, "It was prophesied that I must choose between kindness for my kin and hatred for my enemies. I choose both." And this is this line is it does not make sense. It doesn't make sense to a modern audience because we don't have the background. We don't understand why it is that avenging his father is actually kind to his unborn children that he'll never see. Why is that? Well, we sort of have to unpack the morality of the ancient Norse to understand that. So, incoming rant here. The main difference in morality between us and them, I think, can be summed up as we have what's called a guilt culture, and the ancient Norse had what's called an honor culture. So what guilt culture is, and now guilt culture is not new. This is not something that's, was born in the 1950s or 60s or whatever. It's ancient too. But ours has just kind of like worked its way through to its culmination. What guilt culture is where the locus of morality, so the center, the focal point of morality is internal to the person. So guilt is the main thing that like acts as a check on people's behavior. A man is bound, finally, like at the end of the day, he's bound by what he thinks of himself, his self-image. Now, he might hold himself to a standard. This is not to say that like guilt culture is like totally subjective. He may have an objective standard, and that standard might be outside of himself. But the moral agent is his own final judge. He judges whether he himself meets the standard. That's guilt culture. So that's what we have. Shame culture, on the other hand, which is what the ancient Norse had, is where that locus of morality, that focal point of morality, is external. Instead of shame, instead of guilt, it's shame that is the main thing that drives our actions. And those are two very, very different emotions. Guilt is something that you feel about yourself. Shame is something that you feel about like how others look at you. So a man is bound by what everyone else thinks of him under shame culture. It doesn't matter what he thinks of himself. The final judge of your worth are your peers. And this includes the gods, but also necessarily it includes society, right? It includes your peers. It includes the people in your community. So under shame culture, morality is something that's essentially social. And the power of a shame culture is that it actually holds at bay nihilism and subjectivism. And it does this kind of by like eliminating conscience. So, I mean, and this is a bit of a side point, but I think it's important. So like, no matter how much we want universalist morality to be objective, and this is one of the things that people like about it, is that, supposedly it is objective. The thing is, if every man is bound only by his own conscience, if he's bound only by his guilty feelings about transgressing against the moral law or the scripture or whatever, or the tradition, whatever it is, if that is the only thing that's kind of holding you back, or the main thing that's holding you back from transgressing, sooner or later, the kind of like macro trend in society, you zoom out, will lead to, don't you fucking judge me, right? The aggregate sort of effect of this like universal conscience-based, guilt-based morality the end result of that will be, don't judge my fetish, basically. Eventually, people will come to post hoc justify whatever it is that they already want to do, because they are the judge of themselves, right? So the external standard will atrophy, and what gets put in its place is just your fucking appetites. And this is exactly what happened with us in our guilt culture, which we've had for thousands of years. This is exactly what happened with the Reformation, right? When we basically threw off Catholicism and Protestantism, or Lutheranism was born, we enshrine this concept called sola scriptura, which means that each man interprets the Bible for himself. And before this, the Bible was like written in Latin. Nobody could read it except for the priest. And then one of the things that Luther did, and this is an important part of the Reformation, is to have it translated into the vernacular. It was translated into German, so normal people could read it if they were literate, which even then not everyone was. And because everyone could read it, everyone could interpret it for himself, and each man becomes his own pope. Right? Like the Catholics are not wrong to be against this shit, right? Like there's something there that like is kind of subversive. So there's very subversive. It's just that this ship of, everyone his own high priest, everyone his own judge really sailed 1,000 years before that, when conscience was brought into the picture to displace paganism. Anyway, guilt culture makes every man his own high priest. Guilt culture allows standards to actually be shame culture rather allows standards to be actually enforced. So anyway, back to the Northman. The standards of the Northman that are enforced socially by your peer group are, I would class them as the following three things. And this is, I'm sort of summarizing what my Substack was in my Substack article. I don't like to do that on Culture Dads mostly, but anyway, I think it's relevant here. The first standard is loyalty to your kin, loyalty to blood, right? The second standard is personal bravery. And the third standard is oath keeping. So the oath for these people was so strong and binding that you would rather die than break it. And this is what Dave was saying, right? This actually comes out in many of the lines of the film, where he actually says that. And it's actually Amleth's inability to break his oath to his father. This is actually what creates the whole conflict in the plot. And this is why people kind of think like they don't understand what the motivations are, because they don't understand why that is so important. But anyway, if you understand shame culture, and if you understand the theology, it becomes clear. So this is the part that people have the most trouble with. So that most normies, when they sit down and watch this movie, they're like, why the fuck why can't he just like give up his revenge? Why can't he just like go and live a quiet life with his like wife and kid or whatever? The answer is because he can't, because it's a religious obligation. Because he would be what the Norse called nithir, right? And this brings me to the second standard, which is personal bravery. For these people, to fight recklessly is to be what they call a drenger, which is a total fucking lad, right? Like it's to be a man. It's to be a man's man, right? It's to be the ideal masculine figure. And to do the opposite, to like puss out, is to be nithir, which is today we call this a f***. You're a f***, basically. If you don't fight to the death, right? It's lad or f***, it's your choice. And the problem is that not only is being a f*** unthinkable and like worse than death, the stain of f***ry also touches your whole family, right? To be nithir is to disgrace your wife. It's to stain your children, your clan, your whole folk. Because remember, morality here for these people is fundamentally social. What you do is judged and seen by your whole community, and it also infects your whole community. They have a very, very strong interest in you maintaining your behavior because it reflects on them. Your actions are very much public. It's not a private thing at all, right? And this gets us to the last standard, which is loyalty to blood. So when you understand that number one, when breaking your oath was basically like an unholy act, and number two, when you understand that the stain of your f***ry touches your whole family, it becomes absolutely clear why Amleth couldn't just break his oath to protect his family. This is why he said that I can't choose between being kind to my kin and avenging my father. He chooses both. This is why he says that, right? By breaking his oath, he would have been condemning his family to a fate worse than death. To keep his oath, is like it's not only a duty to his father, it's a duty to his wife and children too. He couldn't like very well like let them live with that stain, right? So anyway, this is the morality that's at the heart of the Northman. And if I may say, it's a morality that white people need to fucking revive. Right? And I think that for demographic reasons, I fully expect it to be revived. It's exactly the loss of this very same morality that has led us to prostrate ourselves in front of blacks, to let the third world colonize us. Because, like, after all, I mean, if a proposition like natural law or the good or some other like Platonic form or whatever is higher than blood, then, I mean, blood basically means nothing because you are what you believe, right? And it's just this worldview that lets us say, oh, it's fine if they come here as long as they have our values or our democracy or even like our religion. This is the fucking worldview that allows for that to happen. Or it's the loss of this worldview of the Northman that lets that happen. No, it's not fine if they come here, if they have whatever the fuck, no matter what the fuck they believe, because blood and religion and values are and ought to be coterminous. As soon as we said a man can choose his religion, we were fucked, right? It took a while to work out the kinks, but eventually we got there. And by the kinks, I just mean this exact worldview that you see in the Northman. So anyway, I think it's important to understand what that worldview is, because it basically unlocks the motivations behind the characters and the whole plot.
Yeah. So how does this tie into Hamlet?
You know, it's very interesting because Hamlet and the Northman are very, very different. I think that they're such different like stories that it's really only the skeleton that they have in common. I guess like there are some things. Okay, so there are some things they do have in common, right? I would say that the main sort of thread that kind of binds the two, other than like the basic plot point of like man's uncle kills his father, he needs to revenge himself. He tries to revenge himself and everybody dies. You know, take that basic skeleton away, which they both share. What else do they share? Well, I think there's an emphasis on fate. So I guess I'll give a quick summary of Hamlet, because I think, you know, a lot of the listeners may not be familiar. They may not know what happens in the play, really. So anyway, there's Hamlet is the Prince of Denmark, and his father's recently died, and his mother has remarried his uncle, like pretty much right away. And he's obviously pissed about that. So he encounters, actually the ghost of his dead father appears to him and says, Uncle Claudius killed me. You need to fucking take revenge, guy. So he starts doing crazy shit, basically. He seems to be acting crazy. There's a question of whether he actually is crazy or not, but he acts crazy anyway. And people are like, whoa, what's wrong with this dude? And he gets to a point, like there's a moment in the play where he gets the chance to kill his uncle, but he doesn't. He hesitates, right? But not long after this, he accidentally kills his girlfriend's dad instead. And this ultimately leads to her committing suicide. So Hamlet's uncle is like, okay, this shit's gone too far. I think he's on to me. And his uncle hatches a plot to kill Hamlet. And so he sends him to England, but then Hamlet gets wind of the plot and comes back. And there's a duel that gets arranged between him and his girlfriend's brother, you know, the girlfriend that killed herself. And during the duel, Hamlet, the brother, Hamlet's uncle, and his mother, they all get killed, right? So anyway, that's sort of, thumbnail sketch of the whole plot. So what do they have in common? I think that really kind of binds them together is like they're both meditations on fate. Ultimately, if watching The Northman, he talks about his fate all the time. I can't escape my fate. Like that line keeps getting repeated throughout the whole movie. And it's a lot more subtle in Hamlet, but fate also is important there too. There's like Hamlet is very, it's very Elizabethan. It's very much, it sounds like a play of its time, but it also does have some like pagan vestiges in it. Shakespeare was not a very good Christian of his time. Like he was an anti-Christian, I don't think, but he definitely was like, he had like, especially if you watch or read Macbeth, you'll get like some serious heathen vibes out of a lot of the shit that comes out of him. So anyway, it's a bit, but the idea of fate is a bit more subtle in Shakespeare. I think each of these like stories kind of like asks the question, can we really change our fate? Can we really change anything? And they kind of, each of them answer it in a little bit of a different way. In the Northman, and in the sagas more generally, it says, no, you can't change your fate, but you need to try anyway. You need to be a drenger, right? You need to be a lad. You need to go out swinging. Shakespeare says, I think, in some ways, maybe echoing the Greeks a little bit more. He says, no, you can't change your fate, but like fate brings you to the same point, but you just choose how you get there, basically. But it's just, I think it's really the same answer in both cases with like a kind of a difference of emphasis. The saga is kind of like a moral lesson, right? The ancient Norse, like the older story of Amleth says that it's the lesson to be derived that what matters. Like Amleth is an exemplary hero, I think. You're really meant to emulate him, and I hopefully I laid that out before. With Shakespearean tragedy, the lesson is much less moral. You're not supposed to emulate Hamlet. I actually find Hamlet to be quite an unsympathetic character. I don't like him. I think he's a but anyway, Shakespearean tragedy is more like mythical in the sense of it's like a narrative or sort of proto-metaphysical or whatever. It's the story that matters. It's not so much the moral lesson. We see these characters and they're moved by fate, and we're made to feel pity for them. We're made to, like, there's an element of horror. There's a kind of purgation. There's like a catharsis at the end of these like Shakespearean tragedies. Again, they're kind of the same, at least structurally, to a Greek tragedy. And we see these heroes very differently. They end up with the same answer, but it's a difference of emphasis, right? Like we see Amleth and we think that dude fucking rules, right? Unless we're moderns, I guess. And the idea is that fate is joyous, like something to be leaned into. At the end of the Northman, if you're me, you come out of that shit and you're fired up, you're jacked up, you just want to go out and fucking like take on the world, you know? Mm. When you read Hamlet, you come out of that thinking, fuck, I'm glad I'm not that guy. You know, like that, and the sort of like the lesson is that fate is cruel. It's something to be feared, right? And I think this is kind of like an interesting reversal of what we would expect, because the sagas and Norse like literature in general is quite bleak. Like there's not a lot of happy shit that goes on, right? And like Shakespeare is, I mean, obviously his tragedies are tragic, but it's like his sort of like general color of his writing. It's full of zest. It's like this sort of Baroque, very ornate thing that's beautiful, right? But the sagas end up being more life affirming in general and emboldening, and the Shakespeare plays end up being more like pitiable and emotionally exhausting. So anyway, I don't know if that answered your question there, But I do think that they have some of the same subject matter. They just treat it really, really differently. And the character of Amleth versus Hamlet, those two guys could not be more fucking different. But anyway, yeah, I'll throw it over to you now.
So how do you? But what? I'm just interested in this. Like, how is it that? Because the way you described it, they're sort of in the same position, and they kind of are. You know, I mean, they're both like revenge tales, et cetera, et cetera. How is it that the characters themselves are different?
Well, I mean, Amleth is a barbarian and Hamlet's a philosopher. I guess I would say that if I had to put it in a nutshell, that would be my sort of like summary of it. But to say a bit more of that, more about this, and I think we can actually tie this into Oswald Spengler's idea of the cycle of civilization. Because, I mean, obviously, The Northman was written in the 2020s, not in the 800s or whatever, but it's meant to evoke, and I think it successfully does evoke the worldview of that time, right? I think it really does. So anyway, I think we can treat that as a good, like, I think we could treat The Northman as a fairly good expression of that worldview. You know, I mean, this episode here is not going to be about, at least not my part of it, is not going to be about sort of like examining the like faithfulness of like the like ritual recreations or the sets or the like dress and everything. I think there have been some really, really good videos on that already. Our buddy Tom Rousel did a great one on that. I think it was in Frothy's Decameron, where he talked about this film, where he basically broke down the pagan elements in it. Anyway, as far as the worldview is concerned, that's kind of more what I'm interested in. And I think that the film does it justice. But so to summarize it, I would say that like Amleth from The Northman is he's the man of springtime, the springtime of peoples. And Hamlet is the man of what you might call the summer of peoples. And this makes sense because if you think that like Amleth is sort of a faithful representation of like, say, the primitive, well, not primitive Germanics, but the Germanics of the Middle Ages, like the 900s or 1000s. And if Hamlet is a man sort of the Elizabethan age, those two times match up to what Spengler would have called the springtime versus the summer. So just a quick background of like what Spengler is talking about here. He has this metaphor of the cycle of seasons. So he's basically like Spengler is one of the big guys, the big cyclical history, theoreticians, I guess. Not really theory, but anyway, he's a big cyclical historian. And the cycle is like a cycle of seasons. So in the springtime, a people is like in its youth and strength. This is them in their like primitive constitution at this moment, and in their sort of birth, really. They're barbaric, they're vitalistic. They're fundamentally of the countryside. They're like rural life is really this paradigm of life in this like primitive springtime of a people. They come roaring out of the hinterlands and they usually take over a dying civilization on the other side of the coin. For these kind of people, for the people of the springtime, their religious form, the paradigmatic religious form for these people is the death cult, right? We we think of that more as like ancestor worship. That's the sort of religion that holds sway when a people is young and full of vigor and vital and everything. They're also very orthopraxic. There's very little in the way of scripture. There's very little in the way of dogma or theology or anything like that. It's all about ritual for these people. And they are hyper masculine. They're hyper centrifugal. They have what's called asabia, which is solidarity, basically. They're ultra tribal, hyper particularistic. This is what people are at the birth of cultures. So that's the springtime. Now, the next, and that's Amleth. So the next stage that they move into, that peoples move into, is the summer, obviously. And for the summer, what happens at this stage of the life cycle of peoples is that they undergo reform. So they take their primitive constitution and they start to look at it, and they start to look at it critically. It starts to kind of come into question. And about this time, because of the just total, the creative vigor and vitality and explosive energy that comes out of the springtime, this is obviously, and the fact that it kind of welds these people together as a very communal, collective unit. Like this is like an engine for the creation of, like, for dominance, basically. This is how peoples come to dominate. And because of that, their numbers start to grow. They become bigger, basically, and they start to move out of the countryside that they came from. And we get the beginnings of urbanization. And right around the same time, what I talked about before, about orthopraxy, with like ritual basically being the sort of paradigm of religion, that starts to become eclipsed by theology and dogma, and things start to become a lot more propositional at this point. It starts to be about, religion starts to be about giving you not commands, but telling you what is true, right? This is kind of where religion starts to go in the summertime phase. And we get the rise of what a lot of people call organized religion, which I don't like that term, mostly just because it reminds me of people that I think are retarded. But anyway, that's what we get. I think everyone kind of understands what I mean by that. And also at the same time, right around the summer of a people, we get the rise of abstraction. Right. So this goes along with like looking at the primitive constitution and calling it into question. We get the birth of philosophy. We start to look at things not as like, here's a taboo that you're supposed to follow, but we start to ask, well, what is the principle upon which that taboo is based? How can I generalize it into a kind of universal formula? And we get the rise of natural law, which is like, I'm of two minds about natural law. That's another discussion. But anyway, basically people in the summertime, they become more contemplative, right? The primitive constitution has to be justified abstractly. It has to now be justified in terms of philosophy, natural law, abstract reason, and we get the birth of critique. So anyway, and this is Hamlet. That's Hamlet. He's that guy, right? But to sort of quickly just like fill out the rest of the cycle, the next stage is autumn, and the autumn is the age of skepticism. This is where we get like the critique. I just said we had the birth of critique. This is where critique starts to like metastasize and grow and become cancerous, and you get the rise of the merchant class. Like before this, basically in the springtime, you had the rule of the warrior. In the summertime, you kind of have more the rule of the priest. Now you have the rule of the merchant comes in autumn. This would be about, for us, this would be about in the like Reformation period to like the French Revolution. And of course, yes, you get revolutions and everything like that. Now, not to totally denigrate the autumn, this is also really, it's the peak of science and art, where your high culture kind of, it reaches its peak, right? Like really, I would say that like the peak of artistic expression in the West was probably the 19th century. And that's probably when science peaked as well. So towards the end of the autumn, towards the end of this Enlightenment phase, the creative possibilities of the people basically become totally exhausted. There's really nothing more that can be done with their culture forms. And then we get into the winter phase, which is the age of imperialism, basically, where civilization is now exhausted. It can't really develop on its own in the direction that it's like naturally going to go. So it has to turn outside of itself, has to look outward, and it has to become an empire. And then you get the rise, in order to support this like imperial ambition, you get the rise of like bureaucratization, you get scientism, like science becomes basically a professional, like it becomes a profession as opposed to trying to figure shit out. And then like at this stage, it's the culture has become sick. Like people they're aware of this. There's like a malaise that kind of hang in the air. And right around the same time, you also get the rise of mass politics, democracy, like mass democracy, not just democracy, but like the worst kind of democracy. Law becomes really formalized. It's kind of like you get this gridlock where nobody can kind of move, and everything it just kind of starts to grind to a halt. And the only thing that kind of can resolve this gridlock is violence, basically. And then you get the rise of the age of Caesarism. You get great men who come in and basically like say, fuck everyone, I'm just going to do whatever I want to fucking do, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You are here now. Basically, like this is we're in the winter phase. We're quite late in the winter phase, I think. Anyway, back to back to Hamlet and the Northman. Amleth is the man of the springtime, and Hamlet is the man of the summer, right? Like Amleth he's a barbarian, right? He's decisive. He's pragmatic. Yes, he kind of like does dither a little bit, like when he's trying to decide whether he wants to like follow his wife over to like abroad and like flee from his destiny. But for the most part, you do not need to. He doesn't. There's no to be or not to be soliloquy in the Northman, right? That's just not who this guy is. He's pragmatic and decisive. Hamlet is the opposite. He is hesitant. He is philosophical. He doesn't know what to do with himself. He's a fucking I'm sorry. Like, I just do not respect this. Although it's brilliant. I'm not saying that like Hamlet is not a good piece of work. It is. It's totally brilliant. And as a credit to Shakespeare's genius, you can totally understand why Hamlet does everything, right? Like even when he like hesitates to kill his uncle, it's because he's like sitting there praying, and Hamlet's like, I don't want to send this guy to heaven. Fuck no. You know what I mean? If I kill him while he's praying, he'll go to heaven. If I wait, I can send him to hell, right? And all the shit makes sense. It's a testament to like Shakespeare's artistry. But as a person, Hamlet he should not be in charge of fucking anything, right? He's the son of a king, but he has none of this like kingly quality about him. He's like a student, right? He's an artiste. He's an intellectual. He doesn't belong in any fucking like in any position of authority at all, right? And this is part of the tragedy of Hamlet, is that like, just when his country needs him the most, just when, the Prince of Norway is like invading, like the king gets killed, usurped by this like absolute like scumbag uncle, and the only person who could like set things to rights is this fucking jellyfish, this like intellectual like fucking bug man. Basically. I'm kind of overselling it a little bit, but anyway, yeah, that's the difference between the two of them. Each of the guys, and I'm selling Hamlet a little bit short here, but each of them has his strengths, and I think the form of each of the works actually kind of plays into it, right? Where the saga is more like it is more fitted to that kind of person, right? It's very straightforward. It's like it's not formalized. It's very much like the saga. I mean, obviously the poetic form is quite formal, but like the plot is not that formalized. It's really like, you know, up to the bard to like weld it together the way that he wants. Whereas the play is very formal. It's like, you know, it's got 5 acts, and each of the acts has to like do a certain thing. You know, the turn comes in the 3rd act, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's very formalized. It's very meticulously put together and everything like that. So even the form of these like different like kinds of drama, I think, like lend themselves to the characters. But yeah, anyways, I'm sorry for the long rant. This is why these guys are so fucking different. Like, they couldn't be any more different. You know what I mean?
No, I liked it. I like your whole the whole thing you just did there. That was interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I just don't really have any takes on Shakespeare. I wish I did have some takes on Shakespeare because he's so important. But it's just it's tough to really dive in and understand and go through all this kind of. First of all, just to fire it up. There's not really an accessible way to get to it. You know, you crack open the books. You can buy the Imperium Press books and study the glossary and everything like that. But I didn't have that yet. You know what I mean? So if you're just starting and you don't have like something like an Imperium Press reference, it's tough to get in there and understand them in written word. And then, you know, all the movies are fucking boring and gay. There's that one Romeo and Juliet movie where they had like John Leguizamo and they got guns and stuff. That was like real cringe. You got I don't even know, dude. You go through the Shakespeare adaptations, it's like 90% of them are just unwatchable gay. And then you go to, I was like, you know what? I am going to watch a traditional Shakespearean play. I wanted to see like some Christopher Lee type shit, right? I wanted to see some like salt and pepper haired guy with one of those old timey British accents where he rolls his tongue and like all that, you know, like, whatever they say, you guys know what I'm talking about. Like, they're just, yeah, absolutely. That's what I wanted to see. I want to see some guy with a cape and shit. And instead, every single Shakespeare production today is just like loaded with diversity. It's fucking there's like trannies, like anything. Like, go look at the Shakespeare Foundation, whatever the fuck, anything that says Shakespeare on it. If you go try to watch their plays, it's like ridiculous. There's a Romeo and Juliet where the Juliet is this like big fat black lady like Lizzo, and she's got this big poofy fucking afro, and like Romeo is this like soy boy, like half a soy boy, and it's like, this is unwatchable. First of all, the Juliet is bigger than the Romeo. Like, that's just not. That's just like against nature. Oh my god! Like, I'm not even saying, like, she wasn't even just like wider. She didn't just have more girth. She was like legit taller too,
towering over the guy.
She's like, I love you, Romeo. They got this fucking behemoth, this monstrous bitch, one of the biggest bitches I ever seen. She had to have been 6'4". This lady, unless that guy was like 4'5", I literally had a dwarf. This lady was a fucking monster. She like towered over, and she's supposed to be the Juliet that's beautiful. We're all supposed to sympathize with how beautiful she is and why Romeo betrayed his family, et cetera, et cetera. Dog, like, I don't even know.
She's like sits on the guy, and she's like, Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo?
Yeah, I lost him. Where art thou?
Oh, this is the world we live in.
I know, it's terrible. It's terrible. I don't know, man. It was just really hard to get into for me. So I'm really excited for the Imperium Press books, because now I can actually get a traditional view at Shakespeare, understand a lot of it, and like, it's not fucking with big fat Lizzos.
Oh god, yeah.
Oh my god.
I'm telling you, sit down with one of the plays, pick one or whatever, they're all good. Sit down with one of the plays and just go through it and take your time with it. right? Read through everything and like look up whatever you need to look up, read the introductions, and then read through them sort of like bit by bit and take your time with it and like understand everything that's happening. The thing is like the wordplay and the Dave, I know you're a big fan of like alliteration and wordplay and shit like that. Dude, you have got a fucking smorgasbord coming. I'm telling you.
I love smorgasbords.
Oh, yeah. Well, apparently so does Juliet. But like, it's so good, man. There's so much in there to chew on. There's just like, it's crazy. It is crazy how much like cool wordplay and everything there is. The thing is, it's from a different time, right? So you kind of have to like, you just have to like put yourself into that world and like it. But when you do, it's just like, it's unbelievable how brilliant the guy was. Like it's obviously, it's beyond cliche to say that Shakespeare was great. Well, there's a reason for that, right? And you can see that. Hamlet's a good example because there's like I said, there's so many. It's just got such a high batting average of great lines and everything like that. So now the story itself, I think, is like it's never been my favorite Shakespeare play, but it's still great, and it's beautifully tragic, and I love tragedy. There's something amazing and life affirming about it and everything like that. But yeah, you got to sit down and take your time with it and like understand every line and like what's being said. There's no bants. There's no like throwaway lines. Everything matters. Everything is like there for a very good reason. And they're very tightly constructed narratives. Like shit moves very, very quickly. And if you kind of lose, like you probably noticed this while you're watching the movies, that if you kind of like, you're like, what the fuck was, what did he say? What did that mean or whatever? And like you miss a couple of things, it's like very easy to get lost and you can kind of like never really find your way back or whatever. Just take your time with it. That's the best way to read Shakespeare that I've found. I actually find that like listening to a production or like watching a like live acted play is not the way to do it. That is like, you just miss too much stuff. You know what I mean? So anyway, I think sitting down, like it's obviously it was meant to be played, but it was meant to be played to a 16th century audience, right? That's not who we are today. So now for us, Shakespeare's literature. And there's nothing wrong with that. Although I will say, and you know, this is probably going to be an unpopular take, that I actually really liked that like Leonardo DiCaprio production of Shakespeare, of Romeo and Juliet. Not like, I mean, it wasn't, okay, it was flawed, right? Because it's kind of like it's teen angst and it's a little bit, like you say, it's a little bit cringy and everything like that. But dude, I love the idea of like making it like modernized, but keeping all the language the same. You know, I think that's great. I think that if that was to be done with like in a based way, with like a fucking Macbeth or something, or Coriolanus, like one of those like really, really heavy duty, like fucking dark Shakespeare plays, it would be something else, right? I think here's an idea for what we've been talking about with like the AI revolution of like movie making, whatever. We've been sort of discussing in private in the like, because we've for the high tier patrons, we've got our we've got our like private chat and everything. So we've been discussing shit about like, you know, how could movies be different? Like, how could we make movies, like people with very little money and means, how could we make movies with like AI and shit like that? Because dude, the deep fake stuff that's going on with like faking like guys' voices, faking people's like, you know, faces and expressions and everything, it is getting so good. If we were able to harness that and actually make movies not with $1 million budgets, but with like, you know, a $25,000 or $100,000 budget and everything like that. Could you imagine doing something like Macbeth, but like for a modern audience and like not putting any fucking pause in it at all? There's no diversity. There's no bullshit. Nothing like that. It would go off like a fucking grenade. People would love it. So anyway, yeah, I liked that one. I actually liked the Leonardo DiCaprio Romeo and Juliet. That is the only production of Shakespeare that I have ever been able to watch more than once and like actually kind of enjoy it a little bit. So for what it's worth, I don't know. A lot of people hate it. So
yeah. All right. Well, we are over an hour, Mr. Mike. Is there anything else you'd like to bring up in closing?
None of the no, I don't think that there's any sort of like major things. I think we sort of like hit a lot of the highlights and everything like that. There's a lot of little things that you can find in this in the Northman that are really cool too. I probably read more into this movie because I love the subject matter than I would read into, a lot of movies. I probably just wouldn't pay attention as much, but there's just like lots of foreshadowing, and the Germanic culture comes across so strongly and everything like that. I am not the guy to talk about whether the dress that they wear is accurate, although I've heard that like a lot of it is and everything like that. But as far as the worldview, as far as the theology, as far as all of that stuff is sort of like the broader sort of like high level stuff is concerned, I think they really nailed it. And it's really cool to see. Like nobody expected that when this movie came out, that like it was going to be so good. Everyone was totally surprised. It was faithful to the moral outlook of pre-Christian Scandinavia. And it was faithful to the morality. It was just, is so nice, so refreshing to see. And it's a gift. It's a real gift to us. It's probably not the kind of movie that's going to be made all that often.
Oh yeah. Like I said, I thought The Northman was really great. I do think that Robert Eggers movies can be a little snooze at times, right? He's got the kind of artsy fartsy thing about him where there's a lot of slow pans and atmospheric things and drone footage and like stuff like that. Like that drives me nuts sometimes. But The Northman was not that bad. The Northman, The Witch. He's got a couple other. What are some of his other ones? I can't remember, but he does do that a little bit. He's only
got like 2 or 3 movies or something like that. So
he's got the Lighthouse. I think he's got more than that. I don't know. I can't remember. But
I'm not the guy. So yeah,
I'm not the guy over here. Yeah. So go check out The Northman if you have not already. If you're not signed up for the Imperium Press Gumroad, make sure to go over to imperiumpress.org/podcast and go get signed up. Get a copy of a hardback edition of the Western Canon series. You're going to love it. Help Imperium Press save the Western Canon from those who wish to erase it. And make sure you get a copy of 4 Great Tragedies. It's 4 Tragedies from William Shakespeare. It's the newest Imperium Press book that just dropped. Go get yourself a copy. And then you can check out what I'm doing. Go over to thebizarchives.com and buy books. Follow us on Twitter and Telegram at The Bizarchives. And I'll see you guys next week on Culture Dads.